Did Apple slip in a little mention of Apple Intelligence? Hello, this is a special catch-up edition of the AppleInsider Podcast, and this time it's just you, me, and I was going to say everything from Apple's It's Glowtime event, but yeah, it's not like Apple kept the event a secret. It's not like you haven't heard what was announced, but while Wes and I will be able to delve more into everything in this week's regular Apple Insider podcast on Friday, for now, let's race through a quick kind of bullet point list of what stands out from the launch, and then maybe a little bit of analysis of what Apple has said and perhaps a touch of what it hasn't yet. And by the way, actually, I've got to tell you this, seconds before you and I started talking, it all started. I'm already getting the first carriers offering me discounted iPhone 16s. I'm already being bombarded with news about iPhone 16 cases. Weirdly, none in fine woven material. I'm not quite sure why. It's like all of these developers and carriers knew the launch was coming. As it turns out, we all knew a lot about today's event in advance. The vertical camera arrangement on the iPhone 16, the new capture button, the new camera control button, and that the Apple Watch Series 10 would have a larger display. You know, we didn't know the fine details, and actually the truth is that we never know anything for certain until Apple actually says it and shows it to us. But starting with the iPhone 16, the standout elements, the reasons to think about upgrading, they probably start like we thought they would with Apple Intelligence, even though that isn't here yet. So much of what was new with the iPhone 16 range comes under the heading of Apple Intelligence, or it's a new feature that exploits Apple Intelligence, or actually sometimes it's something that was required in order to support Apple Intelligence, to make it work. Apple, for instance, doesn't often dwell quite as much as it did today on the specifications of the processor for the iPhone 16. It tends to for the Pro, but not for the regular model. But each thing it told us about speed, about memory bandwidth improvements, it was all building to the same thing, which is this. The new iPhone 16 and iPhone 16 Plus can support Apple Intelligence. They can also apparently support AAA games. I will definitely be asking Wes what he thinks about that on Friday, him being vastly more a gamer than I ever am. And the iPhone 16 and iPhone 16 Plus also have this new camera system that's vertical instead of diagonal, but it's done in order to shoot spatial photos for the Apple Vision Pro, which as soon as I say it to you, I realise is something else to ask was about, since he has one of those. There's also an action button now on the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus. There's a ceramic shield screen that Apple says has been toughened and is now twice as hard as the glass on any other smartphone. And then, maybe this shouldn't interest me quite as much as it does, but it does. The iPhone 16 comes in 5 colours, which you would think at first glance are green, blue, pink, white and black, but you'd only be right about the last 3, pink, white and black, because green, no, actually that's ultramarine, and blue, no, that's really teal. But then there's also this, the battery. So step away from the colours and into more the hardware things here. Apple says that both the iPhone 16 and iPhone 16 Plus were re-engineered specifically so that a larger battery could be installed. But then on the night, in the event, they didn't actually give us one thin clue how long that battery lasts. There are details coming out over time that will tell us more, but in that show itself, in the event, yeah, they just skipped on over that bit. It was actually the same with the iPhone 16 Pro series. There, Apple actually directly said that the iPhone 16 Pro Max has the longest battery life of any iPhone ever. But again, during the presentation, let's not mention exactly what that is. In the details published since, as I say, there are more details coming out, but already we're seeing this. Apple is quoting up to 33 hours video playback on the iPhone 16 Pro, and that compares to up to 27 hours on the iPhone 16. The iPhone 16 Pro models, they use the new A18 Pro chip, a 3nm processor that's claimed to be 15% faster than the A17 Pro in last year's Pro models. So, if the regular iPhone 16, which is using the new A18 chip, can support Apple Intelligence, then the Pro models with the A18 Pro chip, well, they can just handle it better and faster, can't they? Look at the level of detail you get here. The thing is, we're not going to actually feel the speed. It doesn't matter what the numbers are in a way. We won't feel it. We won't get whether or not it's actually as fast as claimed until Apple Intelligence is fully here. But what we'll get right away is that the camera control button is there. And the camera control is now on all of the new iPhones. And it does actually look good. At its most basic, at the camera control button's very most basic, you could just ignore it. You could just carry on taking photos exactly the way you always have. But camera control will give you a quicker way to just pick up your phone and start photographing. Unlike the action button, which is now also on all iPhones, by the way, the camera control is a capacitive button, which means it's touch sensitive. You can run your finger across it. You can swipe along it, and that ability means you'll be able to change settings, you'll be able to control the zoom and so on. Apple also says that app developers are going to be able to offer various functions through this same camera control button, and the suggestion is that they'll be able to integrate your photos with Snapchat, for instance. It's interesting that that's not coming just yet either. For all that these new devices are out and for all that they use iOS 18, which is coming soon, there's so much of these things that are dependent on things that are coming later. Developers developing for it, the FDA approving various health features. Other than the camera control, how to phrase this, the edges of the chassis of all of the iPhones is the same as it was before, but the bezels are not on the Pro models. On the Pro models, Apple has managed to slim the bezels down yet further, and together a fractionally enlarged body, the result is a bigger screen. The iPhone 16 Pro is 0.12 inches taller than the iPhone 15 Pro, and it is 0.3 inches wider. So that should be a kind of a noticeable change in the size of the iPhone 16 Pro when you're holding it, or at least when you hold both that and the predecessor together. With the iPhone 16 Pro Max, I think this is more of an issue, because with that, the biggest model, there's always been the question of whether, is it just too big? Is it awkward to handle? Can you possibly use it with one hand? If you couldn't before, you're not going to now, because this time, the new model, the iPhone 16 Pro Max, is 0.14 inches taller than its predecessor and 0.4 inches wider. I should say the width is the same on all of these. But the thing is, okay, it's still larger, so if it was a problem before, it's not going to be fixed now. But for this slight body increase, you get a 6.9-inch screen on the iPhone 16 Pro Max compared to a 6.7-inch one on last year's model. For the iPhone 16 Pro, the slightly smaller one, the difference is a similar 0.2 inches, with the new model having a 6.3-inch screen. On Friday's AppleInsider Podcast, we're going to talk more, I think, about the specifics of the new camera systems on all of the iPhones. But while we're talking broadly about physical sizes, I noticed that Apple did say it had made one other thing bigger and it had made one other thing smaller. The bigger is the Apple Watch Series 10. The Apple Watch Series 10 has a larger screen, about 30% larger than the previous models. That actually puts it on a par with the Apple Watch Ultra 2, or at least the larger version of the Apple Watch Series 10. And together with the addition of what Apple promises is its thinnest watch casing yet for the Series 10, I'm wondering, it is hard to know why anyone would go for the year-old and slightly chunkier Apple Watch Ultra 2 now, except the unchanged Apple Watch Ultra 2 does still have significantly longer battery life. And I said it wasn't updated, but it's only update outside of new features that are coming in watchOS 11. The Apple Watch Ultra 2 does at last come in a black option. Whereas AirPods, the other thing that Apple said was smaller than before, the AirPods all come in white. Well, the AirPods 4 in 2 editions, and the newly updated AirPods Pro do, and so does the charging case for them, which is the thing that's smaller. There are the AirPods Max. AirPods Max are different. They finally had an update after 4 years, but that update chiefly and Well, actually exclusively, really. It adds that AirPods Max can now be charged by USB-C instead of Lightning. I mean, don't knock it, but, it's not something to get excited about either. Whereas the small, in-your-ear AirPods, they've seen much more interesting updates. While they're called AirPods 4 and AirPods Pro, there are now actually 3 varieties. The first 2 are called AirPods 4, except one of them is called AirPods 4 with noise cancellation. So the lower, cheaper model, the new regular AirPods 4, they look like the old AirPods Pro. They have that design, so they have a better fit in the ear. Plus, Apple says that the audio has been improved. It's been improved through a new acoustic architecture, although there are a few details about that so far. Broadly speaking, we know AirPods 4 improves the bass, but it also cuts out background noise when you're using them on the phone to someone, and it comes with that smallest charging case Apple has made. Oh, and that smallest charging case is, again, USB-C now. AirPods 4 with noise cancellation has one big extra. You'll never guess what it is. Noise cancellation. Active noise cancellation used to be an exclusive feature in the AirPods Pro, but now it's come to the lower model, the AirPods 4, along with a charging case that can use Apple Watch's wireless charger or any key charger. And that case now comes with a speaker so that when you inevitably lose it somewhere, find a mic and make it make a noise. Lastly, for the new devices, there is the new AirPods Pro. Really, everything you know about AirPods Pro, except the shape design, I suppose, it's the same but improved. So there's better noise cancelling, and there's now also adaptive audio, which means you can continue to rudely wear your AirPods Pro as you walk up to somebody and talk to them, but AirPods Pro will lower the volume of music you're listening to so that you can hear people. That's nice. But speaking of hearing, Apple is really focused on hearing this time, because AirPods Pro and your iPhone together can now conduct a proper hearing test. And I think this is quite brilliantly. Depending on the results of that test, the AirPods Pro will adjust their audio to compensate for any hearing issues you might have. And that actually goes even so far as to turn the AirPods Pro into an actual hearing aid. Just as with the sleep apnea in the Apple Watch, though, that hearing health stuff, it's awaiting FDA approval before it ships, but surely that's coming soon, as is Apple Intelligence. For something that we aren't getting just yet, Apple did manage to talk about it so much that at one point you had to wonder, have they finished talking about the iPhone 16 and moved on? Or, as it turns out, had they just taken a sidestep to cover Apple Intelligence in detail? If actually pretty much the same detail we heard at WWDC. So really we're still waiting on Apple Intelligence and on more news about Apple Intelligence, but at last, all of the iPhone and Apple Watch rumours can be put to bed. Until tomorrow, when the rumours start in earnest for the iPhone 17 range and the Apple Watch Series 11. Listen, don't wait for some unknown future device, though. Don't ever wait for that. Don't let the fact that the certainty that next year's models will, of course, be better. Don't let that be what decides you against buying an iPhone 16 model or an Apple Watch Series 10. There's always going to be a better one next year, so whenever you look to buy, look at what's available, what's been announced, and what features are available to you, and then make a decision over whether or not to buy. I can tell you, Apple Insider's Wes Hilliard is definitely buying an iPhone 16 Pro Max. He's on Apple's iPhone upgrade program, and so upgrades every year. Myself, I don't know yet. I am very drawn to the iPhone 16 Pro Max, but I told you about the bigger size. I think just for me, I might have to hold one in my hand to try it out first. So that's what Wes is definitely doing. It's what I'm unsure about doing. That kind of leaves you. Please do email me on william@appleinsider.com with what you're thinking about. Do you know, I mean, how much conversation can you really have? Because in theory, iPhones, Apple Watches, they're devices with certain features at certain prices. It ought to be that we can just easily see whether they're right for us or not. But it isn't like that, is it? Here in the real world, decisions to buy, decisions over what we get, it's all very much more nuanced. A question of what's worth your time and money is not a simple answer. Plus, actually, it's kind of fun delving in. Although, speaking of Plus, I should also say Plus, of course, the cheapest device Apple's announced is still hundreds of dollars. So, despite how you know there's going to be a rush at the pre-order stage, the truth is that none of these are a casual purchase. So, tell me what you think, please, and let's delve into all of this, all of the details, including the ones Apple hasn't included yet. You know there's always some more details that comes out in the next few days after an event. Delve into all of that on the next Apple Insider podcast out this Friday. But for now, that's it for this Roundup Catch-Up Special Apple Insider podcast. I'm William Gallagher. Thank you for listening. Speak to you soon.